Hi. Today, we will explain the storyline of the movie Body in the Attic, which was released in 2023. Okay, let's get straight to the story. Phoebe and Ethan are a married couple. Recently, their relationship has not been very good because Ethan is busy at the office. That morning, Ethan left in a hurry and missed breakfast with Phoebe. Unbeknownst to Ethan, Phoebe had told her secret lover, Lucas, who is a writer, to move into the attic of their house. After Ethan left, Phoebe went up to give Lucas breakfast. Phoebe gave him the place not only so that they could see each other often, but also to give Lucas a place to finish his book and survive in the midst of the odd jobs he was doing. Phoebe then went to the children's book club in her complex to read Lucas's book. All members seemed to like the book, even though they didn't expect the author to be from their neighborhood. After reading the book, Paula, a counselor, met with Phoebe to congratulate her on the new book she had just read. They chatted for a while, and Paula had heard that Phoebe had contacted a local romance novelist. Paula couldn't wait to meet the man Phoebe was referring to. That day, Ethan came home at lunchtime, intending to pick up the clothes he was going to wear to an important meeting. On the other hand, Phoebe showed Ethan a new thermos, which he immediately rejected outright because Ethan already had a thermos. They ended up in a small disagreement where Ethan blamed Phoebe for not taking the laundry of the official clothes he wanted to wear to the laundry. Their dispute stopped after hearing a noise from the attic, but Ethan didn't want to bother. He left immediately. Towards lunch the next day, Phoebe lit a candle and invited Lucas to eat with her downstairs. After dinner, Phoebe said that Paula had invited her to join the council. Phoebe admitted that she missed working in politics and intended to consider Paula's invitation. She then told how she and Ethan used to work in the same field until Paula got pregnant and then miscarried. Since then, Ethan's attitude towards her had changed. Phoebe felt that she had not only lost her child, but also her husband. Lucas sympathized with Phoebe, especially since Ethan was not interested in having more children. Suddenly, the sound of Ethan's car was heard entering the yard. Lucas hurried back to his place, as did Phoebe, who hurried to clean up the rest of their lunch. So panicked, Phoebe dropped the glass the moment Ethan entered. Phoebe was touched to see Ethan's efforts to help her clean up the broken glass. After that, Ethan sat down next to Phoebe and told her that his idea to build a library had been rejected by the council members. Ethan went home early so he could meet his wife and clear his head. On the other hand, Phoebe also said that Paula had asked her to become a member of the mayor's council. Phoebe thought it was a good idea, especially since they could meet often and build projects together. Unexpectedly, Ethan actually rejected Phoebe's idea and wanted her to be a good wife instead. He began to criticize his wife for not being able to adjust to the role of mayor's wife, even wearing nightwear in the middle of the day, after which Ethan returned to the office. After Ethan left, Phoebe went up to the attic. Lucas seemed to be busy finishing his novel, but he also felt sorry for Phoebe, who was often belittled by Ethan. He believed that Phoebe was capable of pursuing her dream of becoming a counselor again, but Phoebe herself was not sure. She wanted them to refocus on the original agreement, in which she gave Lucas 6 weeks to finish the book and live out their secret relationship. Lucas asked Phoebe to run away with him after the book was finished, but Phoebe was still not convinced. Lucas kept persuading Phoebe, at least, to ask her out on a date so that Lucas could prove that he deserved to be with Phoebe. He knew a cafe that was not popular, so he was sure it was the right place, and Phoebe agreed. They went the next afternoon. Lucas tried to impress Phoebe by paying for their coffee, but Lucas's credit card was declined. Phoebe willingly paid for their coffee. They then chatted about their future plans, where Lucas hoped that Phoebe would go with him. But suddenly, Paula came over to talk to Phoebe. Phoebe was suddenly surprised. She didn't expect anyone to know her, but Paula was not prejudiced, especially since Phoebe introduced Lucas as her brother. However, this offended Lucas, and he immediately left the cafe feeling upset. Phoebe followed and apologized, but she still couldn't answer whether she would run away with Lucas later. The next day, Lucas still questioned Phoebe's decision, but her answer was still the same. She couldn't decide. That day, Phoebe accompanied her husband to give a press conference in front of the library, and Phoebe's role as a volunteer provided significant development to the library. While listening to the reporter's questions to her husband, Phoebe saw Ethan in the audience. She became unfocused and confused when the reporter asked for her comment. This made Ethan furious because he demanded that Phoebe perform to the maximum. They ended up arguing until Phoebe brought up the death of their child. Ethan turned to Phoebe and asked her to move on with her life. After the argument, Ethan left. Phoebe went up to the attic to scold Lucas for daring to appear in public, even though no one was paying attention. But Lucas argued that he just wanted to see the woman he loved working. Phoebe finally gave Lucas a chance if he wanted to maintain their relationship for the long term. However, they had to be clever in continuing the relationship. Lucas did not accept Phoebe, considering their relationship like a game, even though Phoebe did not mean to. He also said that he had a little chat with Paula, who was looking for support from the local residents. However, Lucas assured Phoebe that he did not reveal their secret. Phoebe, who was starting to feel worried, finally promised to give Lucas reassurance tomorrow night while Ethan was not at home. That day, Phoebe's friend Jim suddenly stopped by to invite Phoebe for champagne, but Phoebe was not ready and asked Jim to invite her again next week. Even though he felt something was wrong with his friend, Jim agreed. Before going home, Jim looked up. He felt someone was watching from the attic window. Sure enough, as he looked up the attic window, curtains moved closed. The following night, without Phoebe's knowledge, Ethan came home to make up with Phoebe. He gave her a bouquet of flowers and apologized for having yelled at Phoebe the other day. They ended up having dinner together. Ethan promised to be a better husband to Phoebe. On the other hand, Phoebe felt anxious thinking about Lucas. When they were chatting at bedtime, Lucas suddenly came down and eavesdropped on their conversation through the slightly open door. Ethan admitted that he was as devastated as Phoebe when their baby, Rosie, died, but this was the first time he could be open with Phoebe. He also invited Phoebe to start a new beginning as a happy married couple, such as inviting her on a vacation sometime. Of course, Phoebe welcomed her husband's intention. On the other hand, Lucas was very annoyed to hear it, so much so that he almost showed himself in front of them. However, Phoebe quickly distracted Ethan so that Lucas hurried back to the attic. The next morning, Phoebe discussed Lucas's insolence last night. She tried to explain that she couldn't keep her promise to give Lucas reassurance last night because Ethan was behaving differently. Lucas did not accept Phoebe's reason because he was still very offended and chose to focus on his book again. Phoebe was now confused about how to solve the problem. She went to the cafe alone, then ran into Paula again. Paula told her that she intended to hold a community event for writers and artists to gather and raise support for their library. She suggested that Lucas come as the main guest to introduce him to the public. Jokingly, Paula also expressed her interest in dating Lucas. Hearing Paula's suggestion, Phoebe was silent and said goodbye to Paula. Meanwhile, Jim, who is also Phoebe's jogging friend, realized that something had changed in Phoebe. She seemed to be preoccupied, however, Phoebe just said nothing. She also said that she saw someone in Phoebe's attic the other day. Jim asked who the man was, but Phoebe did not want to tell Jim the truth. The next day, Mrs. Stevens from the book club invited Phoebe to talk. She said Paula had told her about the library event. She fully supported Paula's idea, but she had doubts about Lucas. Mrs. Stevens said she seemed to have heard about Lucas's past. An acquaintance saw him as a short-tempered person, difficult to control his emotions. Therefore, she asked Phoebe to reconsider. Hearing Mrs. Stevens' story, Phoebe became even more confused, so she went to see Jim to confide in him. She started with Ethan's changed attitude since Rosie died. Then she admitted that she saw lipstick stains on Ethan's shirt 6 months ago. But Phoebe didn't ask Ethan for an explanation. She harbored her own suspicions until she met Lucas at a writers' community event. She liked Lucas's sensitivity and kindness, and Jim knew right away that Phoebe was cheating on her husband with Lucas. Jim was even more perplexed after finding out that it was Lucas that Phoebe was hiding in the attic. Phoebe thought Jim would support her because Jim always asked her to put her own happiness first. However, Jim didn't want her to cheat on Ethan. Phoebe then confessed that she never expected to love Lucas. At first, she just wanted to help Lucas reduce the cost of living and finish the novel in Phoebe's attic, but they fell in love instead. Now she doesn't know what to do. Jim couldn't help Phoebe, plus Phoebe had to go home right away because she had an event with Ethan. While preparing Ethan's clothes, Lucas suddenly came down and found Phoebe in the room. He knew Ethan wasn't home and wanted to talk to Phoebe. Phoebe then brought up her conversation with Mrs. Stevens. Lucas argued that many people misunderstood his attitude. Phoebe was annoyed because Lucas was acting up more and more, especially since he had promised to finish the book in 6 weeks, but it had been over 6 weeks, and the book was still not finished. Phoebe categorically did not want to give Lucas an extension, and as such, she did not want to continue her relationship with Lucas either. After that, she kicked Lucas out and went to the library event first. Ethan came after her, feeling annoyed. He complained that Phoebe didn't do his request to prepare clothes in bed. Hearing that, of course, Phoebe didn't accept it and said firmly that she had already done it. Ethan couldn't figure it out and told Phoebe to just go home. Phoebe then obeyed Ethan's words. Arriving at home, Phoebe called out to Lucas from downstairs. She then went up to the attic saying that she was ready to make a decision. However, there was no Lucas in the attic, but she saw a figure covered in a white cloth that she thought was Lucas. Phoebe suddenly called Jim for help. Suddenly, Ethan came home because he forgot to bring his speech text paper. Ethan asked her to come to the party, but Phoebe said she was not feeling well. At that moment, Ethan felt something was wrong, but he had to go back to the party immediately. After Ethan left, Phoebe called 911, but for some reason she changed her mind and ran to Jim's house. Unfortunately, Jim was not there. Phoebe went home, then took a knife. She pretended to sleep while carrying the knife with her, but nothing happened until Phoebe fell asleep. The next morning, Ethan claimed he didn't go home last night because he was working overtime. Suddenly, 2 policemen arrived to follow up on the strange-sounding 911 call from last night. Ethan felt it was an embarrassing incident. But Phoebe assured him once again that the phone call last night was just a mistake because she was in a daze. After that, Phoebe went back to Jim's house, but Jim was still not home. Phoebe felt something was wrong. The morning paper was still perched in front of his house, even though Jim always started the day by reading the paper. She then tried to call Jim's cell phone, but only got a voicemail. After Ethan left for the office, Phoebe intended to go up to the attic, when suddenly, she received a text message from Jim saying that he was out of town for a few days. Phoebe then peeked into Jim's house across the street, but saw no suspicious signs. Right after that, a real estate agent came to visit. Phoebe wasn't expecting guests, but she had to play the role of a good host. She showed the real estate agent around the house, and when she reached the fireplace, she realized that a fire poker was missing. Phoebe finally invited the real estate agent to take a look at the other side of the house while she checked the attic. But strangely, the body she saw last night was gone. A few moments later, the agent returned home. Phoebe called Ethan and complained that he hadn't told her in advance that the real estate agent was coming. It turned out that Ethan had misinterpreted Phoebe's desire to start a new life a few nights ago. Ethan was planning to move to the big city and try to run for mayor, which is why he intended to sell their house. After the argument, Phoebe felt nauseous and vomited. It turned out that she was pregnant, but she hadn't told Ethan yet. The next day, after returning from the community center, Phoebe heard movement in her house. She thought Ethan had come home early, but there was no one there, and she only found the missing fireplace poker near the pool. That night, Phoebe said that she had decided to leave Ethan, and she also admitted to cheating on Ethan. Ethan was furious with Phoebe's confession. He ran to the attic, and suddenly Lucas appeared carrying a gun. Ethan had killed Jim because Jim knew that Ethan had hurt Phoebe's feelings. That was when he found out that Lucas was in the attic, but he decided to manipulate Lucas and told him to finish off Phoebe. Phoebe broke Lucas's will and said that she was pregnant with Lucas's child. They wrestled for a while before Lucas was finally shot. Phoebe rushed downstairs to call the police. Just as Ethan was about to shoot Phoebe, the police came to secure her.